What's up, guys? Just making sure the mic's working. So, just need one moment to take a couple seconds. We always do this when we're doing this type of stuff. Alright, we're fine. Yeah, all these episodes recently haven't had something like this. Alright, on that note, good evening, and welcome to another episode of the Robbie Basel Show, episode 16. We're already here. It's absolutely wild. You already know who I am if you've been watching this content before. I'm Robbie Basel. And tonight we have a lot to talk about. It's Monday. It's the first episode of July. That is so weird to say. So basically, this project has been going on for almost 2 months already. Like, it's just trying to embrace that fact has been it's just miraculous. Like what I've been able to do and just the recommendations and everything I've been getting has been awesome. If you want to subscribe, go ahead and do that. I don't care. It's up to you. I can't control you. Do whatever you want. Give you the dislike button if you even want to do that. But tonight, sorry if I'm a little tired, but we're trying to give you the energy today. We're going to start with the Gold Cup tonight because that was when we left off on Friday. I talked about how El Salvador and Costa Rica needed to be a must-win match for one of them. And guess what? No one wanted to win. The match ended 0-0. I watched the whole match. It was end to end for some parts of the game. El Salvador playing that traditional little block with a couple attacks here and there. Costa Rica, both teams had great chances. El Salvador had a great chance at the end of the first half. But in the end, it's a 0-0 draw. And after Panama's win during the stream, going into the final match day, which is tomorrow on July 4th. Happy 4th of July, by the way, for everyone tomorrow. Panama is qualified for the next round. Martinique is in second, ahead of Costa Rica and El Salvador. El Salvador plays Panama. Martinique plays Costa Rica in a match that if Martinique gets a point out of, then unless El Salvador win by multiple goals, Martinique's going to be through if they get a point tomorrow. So very crucial in that matchup between Martinique and Costa Rica. Both teams, of course, Costa Rica not scoring many goals. If you look at what they've done so far, they've scored one, conceded two, and that's pretty self-explanatory. They lost 2-1 in their opening match. They drew their second. That's that for Costa Rica so far. El Salvador, same deal. They went on and lost to Martinique 2-1. Have just drawn Costa Rica and now have to win against Panama, which is probably the toughest task to do. Looking at their goal difference, they went out and won their opening match 2-1. If we could look at the results right here, and then they beat Martinique 2-1 in a match that they didn't look. We talked about they look convincing at points, but the stats are not going to really justify what Panama was really able to do. And then I talked about how Canada should beat Guatemala, and I have no idea who's going to win the other match. The first match, this Guadalupe game was fantastic because we possibly saw the goal of the tournament. I posted in my IG story. If you saw it, it's in the highlight reels on the Gold Cup Instagram. I think it's at CONCACAF Gold Cup or at Gold. I don't know. Just search it on Instagram if you want to see it. It was an absolutely filthy goal. And Guadalupe beat Cuba 4-1 to possibly to be leading the group on 4 points because Guatemala, who won their opening match, went out and drew Canada. Canada with 2 draws to start the tournament. It's a very disappointing start from Canada. We're going to look at this match now, break it down a little bit, what they were able to do. What they weren't able to do is a better way to put it. They got outshot. They do have more on target. Guatemala had 11 shots, only 2 on target, though, which is very interesting to note. Canada had 9 with 3 on target. Canada had the possession, the passes, the pass accuracy, all those stats, and yet still were not able to break down anybody. And the lineup, granted, they've thrown on some reserve players. That team should still be able to beat a Guadalupe or Guatemala. So it's concerning that Canada has not been able to break down anyone that easily. But it's raising the question of if you have to face the Canadian reserves and the Canadian backups, you're going to have a better shot to win if you are a lower side. And if you're a team like the United States or Mexico, you're going to even even better against the Canadian reserves, showing that their national pool, if I could describe it briefly, is very top heavy, having players like Alphonso Davies, Jonathan David, Kyle Larin, Tajon Buchanan. They have those players. And then you have this whole, I'd say, top 20. And then it just goes downhill from there. The United States doesn't really have that. You've seen it from this Gold Cup so far. I say it's about 50, and then it falls off, which is really solid if you're talking about the United States national team. So Canada disappoints again. And then we go into last night. So last night, we're going to start with what could have happened in group letter A. So it's the United States. Then at the time, it was the United States, Jamaica, Trinidad. No, it was Jamaica, United States? Yes, Jamaica, Trinidad, United States, and St. Kitts. So Jamaica was in first, United States was in second. I keep getting mixed up. So Jamaica in first. No, it was the United States in first. I'm sorry. I'm getting two groups mixed together. United States is in first on goal difference, followed by Jamaica, Trinidad, and then St. Kitts and Nevis. So what needed to happen for Trinidad to go through was for them to win. The United States are going to be through if Jamaica dropped points, or they drew or if they drew, or win, of course. St. Kitts was out, and Jamaica just needed to grab points. Well, Jamaica made this really easy for them. Own goal in the 30th minute, and then another goal at the end of the first half, courtesy of John Russell. And then 3 goals in the second half by the Jamaican reserves gives them a 5-0 win and a second-place finish in Group A, behind the United States, who went out and showed up against the Trinidad and Tobago national team, a team I was hyping up in the beginning in the preview video. But it turns out it didn't really matter. Jesus Ferreira got another hat trick. Is now going to be in the history books for having some of the most hat tricks in the United States and the USMNT history. But in the first 10 minutes, Trinidad were holding down their own. They got in the first half, they had some good chances. Second half, if you look at the highlights, they didn't really do very much. But you saw goals from Cade Cowell, who has his first ever USMNT goal. You had Brendan Vasquez scoring again, had his second goal of the Gold Cup. Granted, it was in the 94th minute, so it's really in garbage time, but he still has, I think, some of the best potential. I think he should be starting I think if you want to go with that formation, you cannot start Christian Roldan again. That lineup, was not a fan of Christian Roldan most of that game. Granted, he was creating some plays, but if you had a better playmaker, a guy like a Paul Arriola, if you want to go back that far, playing on the wing, then I would rather have him in that situation. The US outshot them 23-9 with 8 on target to 3. They dominated the possession. They just looked like the better team, and that's what you expect from the United States. When I thought they might be underperforming and possibly be able to drop points, no, they came out firing and they did what they needed to do. Got the 6-0 win, back-to-back 6-0 wins to cinch up what should have been it should have been way easier if Jamaica was not a problem. And I think the Jamaican draw really lit the fire for the United States to go out and win 6-0 back-to-back games against these two small island nations. How they perform in the quarterfinals, I got no idea. I have no words for how that quarterfinal is going to go because we don't even know who they're playing yet. And now we're going to go to the Group B, which at the time it was Mexico, then Haiti, then Qatar, then Honduras. So Honduras needed a win and Qatar to drop points. Qatar needed a win because they had the better goal difference. And Haiti needed to win or get points as well. So we'll go to the matches. We'll start with the match that everyone was talking about. That's Mexico and Qatar. And Qatar really made this really anticlimactic because Honduras went on one, but a goal from Hazim Shahada in the 27th minute gave Qatar, by the way, their only shot in the match, the win. Yes, you heard this right. Qatar had one shot and scored. Riddle me that one, Memo Ochoa. So Qatar went out and played the most boring match you could possibly play as a team, scoring one goal and then playing very defensive. Sounds like something Qatar would do, saying that they needed to win, not playing that the tactic sucks. It does, but it was a very anticlimactic match because Honduras went out and actually won a match. But because they lost 4-0 to Mexico, and it's just, kids, this is why you don't lose to Mexico 4-0, because you go out and draw Qatar and then win a match and still don't make it through. So 4 points has proven to not get you through in this tournament. And now we have that group setting up with Mexico and Qatar, which is the opposite of what I had in the prediction. But I do have 5 of 5 in teams that have qualified for the second round. Matches tomorrow, we're going to be kicking off at 6:30 on the 4th of July. We have Guadalupe and Guatemala, and Canada and Cuba. Guadalupe and Guatemala, I really can't stop combining those two together. It's going to be the matchup to watch in the first session. I think it's going to be better. Canada should beat Cuba, setting up what should be a must-win for one of these two. However, Guatemala, if Canada wins 1-0 and that other match ends in a draw, Guatemala, I believe, would be through on goals for, because they have not conceded a goal yet. So if it's a 0-0 draw tomorrow, then Guatemala and Guadalupe would be through, I believe, out of Group D. But I think that matchup, that Guadalupe looks like a competent team. I did not expect that going into this. I thought the smaller countries, I thought Cuba was going to come out and bounce back. They didn't. They've looked bad. I think they should lose to Canada's B squad, but at the end of the day, this tournament's been so much of a toss-up that you really don't know what's going to happen. But I still do think Canada should win, but they're all really going to come down to that Guadalupe versus Guatemala game tomorrow at 6:30. And then for the second session, if you don't say Panama and El Salvador is the game to watch, then I don't know what to tell you. El Salvador needs to go out and win. And if El Salvador goes out and wins, you have to back Costa Rica to get a result against Martinique. Because if Martinique goes out and beats Costa Rica somehow, that other match doesn't matter at all. And Panama and Martinique would be going through. Now, Martinique, I mean, I've never really heard of this national team before. I mean, they've gotten killed in the Nations League. They were Nations League A, though, so it gives them props. But they've played Costa Rica before. And the last time these two played was a 2-1 loss on match day 5, I believe, of the Nations League. Just make sure. Yeah, so match day 5 of 6, this is back in March. Martinique actually took the lead of this match. I didn't even know about this. Martinique took the lead of this match with 2 late goals by Costa Rica, sealed on the win. It's going to be a very back and forth game, possibly that other one, but I do think Costa Rica should get the result, seeing that this is a neutral site game, or in Costa Rica. I think Costa Rica, you'd have to back them anyway. But all to play for tomorrow. To the 5 teams that have qualified for the knockouts are Panama. They play tomorrow. And you have Qatar, Mexico, United States, and Jamaica. So a lot to play for in those matches tomorrow, and still for a lot more to play for in the Gold Cup, which the quarterfinals start this week. We're going to put the free agencies to the end of the video today, just to change it up a little bit. And we're going to quickly go into the Austrian GP next. Usually Formula One's last. It's not today. Formula One is second. And the order, Max Verstappen wins again, which, I mean, this is really the only track other than Monaco to win, I think, against Max, for how short it is. I mean, was able to watch the sprint race. The sprint race was actually very fun. You saw Nico Hulkenberg actually put a pretty competent fight on the intermediate tires. And then once it started to become more of a medium tire race or a soft tire race, then you knew the Haas was going to get destroyed. He actually didn't even finish the main race, which is really sad. His car basically, for those who don't know how the race ended, Nico Hulkenberg's car was smoking up, so he had to pull out of the race. The biggest surprise for me, other than Sargent finishing 13th somehow, was, I mean, you have to say Perez in third, how bad he qualified. I mean, qualifying, I believe there was like an issue at the end of qualifying, so Perez was out, but Perez moving out to third. Charles Leclerc getting a very good result, finishing in P2 after winning here last year. Very impressive from him, keep holding it down in second place. Lando Norris finishing in fourth. Carlos Sainz finishing in sixth, which is a solid result for him. Hamilton in eighth. It was a very disappointing day from, if I could find him. George Russell, actually, no, it wasn't that disappointing. He missed out on Q3 again, but finishes in seventh. So the pretty good, solid results from. I mean, Mercedes finished in sixth, seventh, and eighth, which is weird to see Russell over Hamilton, seeing how both of them started. But I believe Hamilton got a penalty. But yeah, not much to talk about from the F1 race. There wasn't not many like big time moments that happened, other than the car breakdown from Hulkenberg. But we'll look at the standings next. Driver standings: Max Verstappen extends his lead to can't do the math. Oh guys, extends his lead. I believe that's 81 points over Sergio Perez, who retakes second place. So then we have Alonso in third, then Hamilton, Sainz and Leclerc, Russell in seventh, then Stroll, Ocon, and Lando Norris, who has suddenly turned the season around. I talked about it on the Starting Grid podcast, the other podcast I've been on this year, the disappointments from McLaren. They're picking it up, sort of. They're getting more finishes in the points. The car looks more competent, but I don't know what to say about them. They're currently sitting in sixth behind Alpine. I don't know if they hold down sixth. I think it's actually gonna be pretty good for them depending on how they started the season. But who knows? I think the only other race where we can possibly see a change was the unpredictability of Monza. Because if you looked at the history of Monza, we've looked at the former recent winners, Hungaroring, same thing. We saw Esteban Ocon win there recently. But if you look at Monza, you had Leclerc, you had Daniel Ricciardo, who's not even in F1 right now. He's the reserve driver for Red Bull. You saw Pierre Gasly win, which is probably my favorite Italian Grand Prix that I've ever watched, was Pierre Gasly winning the race in a purely tactical race. So the way that that's looked, it's very possible that you could see a dark horse win in Monza, or I think Hungaroring with Ocon winning recently. But other than that, there's probably not many other places. Maybe Qatar. I think Qatar could be a sleeper because due to the unpredictability that we haven't been there in a long time. But I don't know. There's still a lot to play for in F1 this season. I think for second and not first. I think everyone would say that though at this point in the season, with how anticlimactic it's been. I think that's the best way you even could put it for what's been going on in F1 this season. So since I'm still leaving the free agencies to last, we're gonna head to Wimbledon next from what happened today. We'll start with the men's side. So if you remember, I said Nick Kyrgios was a sleeper for this, and he withdrew on Sunday to make this really anticlimactic for me. But the biggest upset of the day, and I called this happening, was Francis Aliassime of Canada. He went out in 4 sets to an American. His name was Michael Mimo. I think that's how you say that. I don't know. I didn't watch the match this morning. Aliassime loses in 4 sets. My sleeper picks of Herkerats, who beat Amos Vanilas in straights. Casper Ruud went out and won today, playing a very convincing performance. So, because originally, I think it was actually no, it was a replacement beat Aguirre Asime, making this even worse for Aguirre Asime. We saw Rublev go out and win. Busetti won at a very early time in the morning. Leon Brody got out a good win in straight sets today. JG Wolf, Bublik, they've talked about a lot on ESPN today. Beat Mackenzie McDonald in 4 sets after dropping the opening set. And not a lot of other upsets happened. A lot of suspended matches because there was a rain delay for around 90 minutes. And of course, by the way, Novak Djokovic did win his match today. But the match to watch for in the morning, Daniel Evans is down 2 sets to love against Quentin Halys. I think that's how you say that, from France. So that'll be something interesting to note to watch out for tomorrow. But another match to watch out for tomorrow for sure. If I can find Holger Rune, I've talked a lot about Holger Rune. Tsitsipas, I haven't really even mentioned him at all. He faces Diem from Austria at 6 in the morning tomorrow. Demonure plays early. We have Sebastian Corda. So hopefully the Americans can win on the 4th of July. That actually be really fun. He plays Vesely. That should actually be a very tough matchup for Sebastian Corda. We have, if I can find the match, Cam Norrie plays in the late session on The last game of the day on court number 1, Tommy Paul plays at 10:30, and Medvedev also at 10:30, but he's playing on court number 2. That should be an interesting one. And of course, you can't go without mentioning Andy Murray, who plays at 9:45, and Francis Tiafoe plays at 10:30. If I can find the match, Alcaraz, by the way, plays at 8 a.m. tomorrow. So a lot of fun matches to watch out for in the morning tomorrow. But on the women's side, we had a big upset as 2020 Australian Open champion Sofia Kenin defeated Coco Gauff in 3 sets. I was able to watch this match. This match is a lot of fun. Some of the best rallies that I've seen in tennis in a good amount of time. For those who don't know, I do watch the tennis majors and a little bit of tennis, like the smaller tournaments as well. So I do know about this a good amount. And Coco Gauff in rallies was not that dominant at times, especially in the third set. I saw a stat. I think she was 3-24 in matches after she drops the opening set, which is a fun stat to look out for, and make that 3-25 because she lost to Kenin today. But yeah, Kenin poured it on in the third set. There's a very crucial game in the third set where Kenin was down at break point 3 times and rallied back to deuce twice, and then came back to win all the way to hold serve in the third set. But she goes out and wins. That's the biggest upset of the day for sure. We saw Venus Williams unfortunately lose. She did pick up an injury. I think it was a knee injury in her match, but she was able to finish, but she was definitely not the same. We saw, I gotta find the match. We saw Samsonova. There you go. The 15th seed losing to Bogdan of Andorra, which is a very interesting matchup to look out for. Which is I didn't really expect to really be an upset. I didn't really know much about the match. We had Jessica Pegula, who I talked about with Coco Gauff. She went out and beat Lauren Davis in 3 sets after dropping the second set in a nice long tiebreak. We had Kudermetova, the 12th seed, go out and win. We had some other good seeds win as well. Swiatek after the rain delay. Her matches during the rain delay this morning. She looked really good today. Garcia, the 5 seed, looked good as well, winning in straights. Kasakia, Bencic, excuse me. And not a lot of other matches to talk about. Zhang, the 24th seed, that went out as well. So only one match that was suspended on the women's side today. So they'll resume tomorrow. Of course, the big seats, if we can find out the big seats for tomorrow. We did have one match canceled. I don't know if there's a replacement. We have Madison Keys, if you want to watch an American. She's at 11:15 a.m. currently scheduled, but match may probably pushed back at some point. Ons Jabeur, who I really like in this tournament. I talked about her before. She plays at 10 a.m. on court number 1. That'll probably be on ESPN. We have Kurchikova on 9:15 on court 2, the 10 seed. Rybakina plays at 8:30 on center court. That's definitely going to be on ESPN. She plays, I think that's Shelby Rogers. At 8:30, we have Sakari, who I also liked in this tournament. She's at 8 in the morning on court number 3. Pliskova and plays Kostic on court 12. Kvitova plays on court 2 at 8. Sloane Stevens, my underrated pick. My sleeper, she plays Peterson at 8 a.m. on court 15. So probably have to go to ESPN Plus for that one. But a lot of good matchups tomorrow and a lot of matchups to watch out for in the future at this tournament for sure. High energy, a lot of fun, and the grass looks great. That's all I can say about Wimbledon so far. Especially at center court. They were talking about the grass a lot during the broadcast, how much it wears down. It looked very good today. From what I was able to watch for the multiple hours that I watched this thing today. So a lot of fun so far for sure. But we're going to move on to the big 2 things that people have been asking me about. That's free agency. So we're going to begin. So we'll name the big moves. And this had to have been the most anticlimactic thing of free agency of the 2. Because there was not that much movement in the beginning of the day until the end. So for those who have not really paid attention, Cam Johnson signed a big big extension. I don't know why. We're going to go team by team here. We had Oshai Brissett. We're just going to name every deal. I'll talk about the big ones later on. Oshai Brissett and Kristaps Porzingis go to the Celtics. Cam Johnson returned. Dennis Smith Jr. and Lonnie Walker agreed to one-year deals to the Nets. LaMelo got a nice extension with the Hornets. I did not expect him to happen that quickly. Kobe White, who I think is an underrated signing, returns to the Bulls along with Torrey Craig and Javon Carter. Karis LeVert returns on a 2-year deal with the Cavs. Max Strus on the sign and trade. We talked about that in the last podcast. Georges Niang also agreed to a deal. Kyrie returned. We talked about that. Dwight Powell returned. Seth Curry and Dante Exum went to the Mavericks. Justin Holiday, Reggie Jackson, and DeAndre Jordan go to the Nuggets. Monte Morris went with a sign and trade from the Wizards. Draymond returned. We talked about that. Chris Paul, we talked about that. Corey Joseph also went to the Warriors. The meme Dylan Brooks went to the Rockets. Fred VanVleet, I believe we talked about in the previous podcast. Bruce Brown, Tyrese, and then Obi Toppin. I'll quickly talk about this because this is a very interesting move with Obi Toppin. Was acquired for 2 second-round picks. I think the reason this was going to happen is 2 reasons. You have to think that the Knicks didn't really have probably the money next year or in the future to re-sign him. So they got whatever value you can get for him now. They probably weren't going to develop him. And I think Indiana could possibly develop him at the power forward position. I think he can be their starting power forward this year. So Indiana getting a good deal with Obi Toppin. They have a decent backcourt now with Tyrese Halliburton, who they re-signed, along with Bruce Brown. Russ returned to the Clippers for way less than I thought he was going to get. KJ Martin and Mason Plumlee also go to the Clippers. The Lakers have been very active, signing, I believe that's 7 players, including depth pieces in a big one, I think underrated one with Gabe Vincent, who was big in the playoffs. Austin Reeves returns along with Cam Reddish, Taurean Prince, Rui Hachimura returns as well, along with Jackson Hayes, and then D'Angelo Russell, of course, re-signed with the Lakers. Desmond Bane got a giant contract extension with the Grizzlies. Joining him would be Derrick Rose and Marcus Smart, who was in that 3-team trade with the Wizards and Celtics. Miami re-signed Kevin Love and signed Thomas Bryant and Josh Richardson. Chris Middleton returned to the Bucks. I mean, I think that we all knew that was going to happen. Brooke and Robin Lopez, the memes are going to be immaculate with the Bucks. Can that help them win a championship? We'll have to wait and see. Return to them, and then Jay Crowder and Malik Beasley stayed with the Bucks. The Timberwolves got a big extension from Anthony Edwards. I do not know how they did this financially. Shake Milton, Troy Brown, and Nickel Alexander Walker also are either still on or have gone to the Timberwolves. New Orleans has not been that active. They've signed Cody Zeller and re-signed Herb Jones. The Knicks have made one move, and I think it's a very good move, and that's signing Dante DiVincenzo, adding a defensive guard, and really having the big main 3 guards, I think, on the Knicks are all Villanova players. Will they be signing more Villanova players? That's just a wait and see. Oklahoma City signed and traded for Victor Oladipo, who has fallen off the face of the earth. Patty Mills was also acquired in a trade, and Jack White signed on a 2-year deal. The Magic have signed Joe Ingles and have re-signed Moritz Wagner. Pat Bev went to the Sixers. I don't know why the Sixers did this. The lack of chemistry that they have now created is terrible. And maybe they trade James Harden for more depth. I don't know. Know what team has been really active, though? The Suns. They signed Keita Bates-Diop, Drew Eubanks, Eric Gordon, who I think is a good deal, Damian Lee, Chimezi Matu, Josh Okogie, and Yuta Watanabe, along with acquiring Bradley Beal, Jordan Gooden, and Isaiah Todd in that trade with the Wizards and Pacers. Wow, the Suns realized their issues now and have actually gone out and didn't really spend that much money. I don't believe they spent a lot of money, but have found ways to sign short-term deals for depth pieces, and I think they've done a very good job so far. I don't know who I don't know who I'd pick now. I mean, they've solved that one problem. I don't know how confident I am in a big 3 running through the whole season with Beal, Durant, and Booker. I don't know how confident I am about that yet, along with DeAndre Ayton, of course. But I do like that starting lineup the way they are now. I don't know who's going to run the point, or if they're going to put Beal at the point, or move some of the small forward. I don't know. They have a lot of options, though, that's for sure. So I'm intrigued about the Suns. I'm also intrigued about the Trailblazers because they might be trading Damian Lillard. He requested a trade. So Damian Lillard requesting a trade is a big deal. And apparently, Jeremy Grant's stayed on a big extension. I don't know. I don't know what the Trailblazers are doing at this point. So the Sacramento Kings, Domantas Sabonis agreed to a big extension, and they have re-signed Alex Len and Trey Lyles, and they've signed Sasha Veznikov, who is from overseas. I've heard he's pretty good. The Spurs haven't really done very much. I like the deal with Trey Jones. I think it's a sleeper at the guard position. Julian Champagnie returns on a 4-year deal, and Sandro, I'll try to say this right, Mamukavishvili. It's weird that I can say Kvaratskhelia and not this. I believe they're both Georgian players, so I don't know. The Toronto Raptors have signed Jalen McDaniels, re-signed Jakob Poeltl, and signed Dennis Schroed. Utah have done barely anything. That they did get John Collins, his bad contract, so I don't know where this puts Utah with my predictions for the season. I also don't know when I'm doing predictions for the season. We'll find out eventually. Jordan Clarkson, though, I think is a good extension, though, from the Jazz. And finally, the Wizards re-signed Kyle Kuzma, who I like this move a lot. They had to get somebody good, pair with Jordan Poole, but it was. I'll talk about that in a second. They got Jordan Poole and Ryan Rollins in the trade, Landry Shamet in the trade with the Suns and Pacers, Tyus Jones, Danilo Gallinari, and Mike Muscala in that trade with the Grizzlies and the Celtics. So, all in all, there's been a lot of moves already. Let's go over the big ones. And I'm going to start, I think, some of the bigger moves. We'll go from top to bottom. By the way, I forgot to mention Rudy Gay. I don't know if I mentioned Rudy Gay to the Hawks. I don't know. The big ones and the ones that are making me question things that I haven't talked about, if I could find it. And it's making me question what the Rockets are doing. To start with the Rockets, they got Van Vliet, which I thought this was going to be the only thing that they were going to do and help develop their young players. How many young players do they have? Have him be like the Chris Paul when he was with the Thunder and help mentor the youth. But no, they want to get more competitive and sign Dylan Brooks, which I don't think is the answer whatsoever. So now you have valuable picks that you just used. Those guys aren't going to play as much, which is going to hurt their development. And now they're going to have even less value. So I don't understand what Houston's trying to do, since they just drafted a bunch of guys. Now they're not going to even get a play at all, some of them. And the guy that makes this more confusing is Cam Whitmore, who's listed. I think he's going to be like a third guy on the depth chart at the small forward position. So the Rockets are not making much sense. What would you expect, honestly? The next team, and I've liked what this team has done, is the Lakers. So they've gotten better depth than what they had last year. They've added Cam Reddish. They've added Gabe Vincent, who I really like his depth for them. They've re-signed Austin Reeves and D'Angelo Russell. They've added center depth in Jackson Hayes. They've returned Rui Hachimura. So they've gotten better depth. Same with I said about the Suns, who I also like what they've done so far. They've done things right, but will they get somebody better? That's really my question with what the Suns already surpassed my expectations for free agency for them. They surpassed that already. Well, the Lakers are close, but I think they need one more valuable piece to really help out their bench. The Grizzlies, I don't know what to think about them. If you're moving Desmond Bane, the small forward, this makes sense with game Marcus Smart to put the lineup of Ja, Smart. Eventually, when Ja comes back from suspension, it's Ja, Smart, Bane, Jaren Jackson, Steven Adams. I like that lineup a lot. I'm just wondering where the bench production is coming from, because you can't have a two-man squad unless it's like the bubble season, and expect that this team to win 30, 40 games. Lakers have learned that. They tried to get depth, but at the same time, they're still while they're trying to get depth, they're still not the greatest team. They're still going to be having to battle their way through the West. You saw what not having good depth, what happened to that, or having a good starter in certain positions, how that damages a team. I think not having good rotation could damage a team like the Grizzlies. But I think they're the biggest wait and see, because I don't know what to think about them without them not having John Morant. I don't know. I don't know what to think about them right now. I think that's a big question mark for sure. Sorry about that. Apologies for that, guys. The next move, I like what the Timberwolves did with signing Anthony Edwards. The Knicks gained DiVincenzo, I've already talked about. Suns, we already talked about. And then I thought Sacramento, I believe they've also re-signed Harrison Barnes, but it's not listed here. So I don't know if it's official if they re-signed Harrison Barnes or not. But Domantas Sabonis going to agreeing long-term to an extension, I think is a very big positive from the Kings, saying that they have the idea that they can still be really competitive. And they're saying, yeah, we have to win now. They have to win now. The Pelicans and the Kings are thinking very similar situations. Granted, the Pelicans had a much worse season because they lost Zion. But I think they're both at the stage where the Thunder are just below this. We have a lot of young players. Now we're getting the depth. Can we start pushing for the playoffs? Can we start pushing for better spots? Can we start winning playoff series? That's the question for the Kings. Can you repeat what you did last season? That's my biggest question for them, is can they repeat what they did last season? I don't know if they can or not. So that'll be a very interesting thing to note. And John Collins was the other thing I was going to talk about, because I don't know what the Jazz are trying to do either. Because if you're Utah, are you trying to be in win now mode? Or are you trying to be like in the middle? Like, I don't know what they're trying to do. So I think if they get better depth, some better players as well. I mean, they have Laurie Markkinen. They have, I'm forgetting his name. They have a good small forward as well. So I don't know where Utah is at, honestly. So I'm very intrigued to see what direction Utah goes, but we don't know what direction they're going in. But that's going to be all from NBA free agency. There's more probably to talk about on Friday, which you will see likely a different studio. That's for sure. So NHL free agency kicked off on Saturday. That's what we're going to head to last. And we're going to begin with the first deal being a waived Oliver Ekman-Larsson, who used to have a giant contract with the Coyotes, then went to the Canucks, then he was bought out, and now he's going to the Panthers. And I think that's good defenseman depth for the Panthers. Ryan Reeves signed, though the first signing I talked about was Ryan O'Reilly, and I thought he'd be a fit in a lot of places. He went to Nashville on a 4-year, $18 million contract, which roughly in AAV is around $4.5 million. I think that's a pretty good move. I don't know what direction the Predators are going in, so that makes me question a little bit. But I like the player of Ryan O'Reilly. I don't know what to really gauge about what Nashville is doing. That's the way I'm going to assess that move. But I do like the move and going out and getting a guy like a Ryan O'Reilly. I think that's a pretty good deal. The Rangers signing Blake Wheeler, getting the veteran influence. They've also signed Jonathan Quick. I believe they made one other move. Tyler Pitlick, and I think they made a move today, but we're going to come back to that later. The Rangers are getting older. That usually doesn't work. Ask Pittsburgh. That usually does not work. So I don't know what the Rangers are trying to do. I mean, they're trying to add depth, maybe re-sign Tarasenko by getting old depth and then re-signing Tarasenko. So I don't know. I don't know what to think about what they've done so far. Mackenzie Blackwood inked a 2-year, $4.7 million deal. He was traded to the Sharks before the draft. That's a pretty good move. Where I keep scrolling through, there's a lot of moves that happened. So, Gustav Nyquist, Milan Lucic went back to the Bruins. Do what you will with that. They keep getting older. Like I said, that usually doesn't work. Dmitry Orlov signed a 2-year, $15.5 million deal with the Hurricanes. I like that move a lot, actually. Following a post-trade glow up with the Bruins, I think that's a good move for them. Add some more star power for the Hurricanes, who I think can really make a move next. I think they're stuck at that one level where they're that good, and there's just that one glaring hole that they can never, ever seal up. And if you followed the NHL, I think you can agree with this, it's the same problem. I think it's goaltending because it's never been stable. Everyone keeps getting injured. And I think the teams have proven as Vegas that a fourth string goaltender can win you the Stanley Cup. So I don't know. I don't know what to think about that. Carson Soucy heading to Vancouver. Pacioretty going to the Capitals. I don't know why they did that. Maybe they still fancy themselves as competitive, but I don't know. We have, still scrolling through. A lot happened, like I said. Matt Duchene went to Dallas. I don't know if I mentioned Dallas as a spot for him in the previous video. I don't remember, but I think it's a pretty good move. Adding another kind of aging center, just probably younger than Joe Pavelski. So I kind of like the move for Dallas, getting you some valuable center at a great rate for Dallas. 1 year, $3 million, perfect. Probably exactly what you were going for. Jason Zucker went to the Coyotes. I don't know why, because the Coyotes suck. I don't know why a player of his caliber, other than going back to playing in his home state, which makes sense if they are more competitive. I think if you were older and wanted to do something like that, then it would make more sense. But going at the year he is, I don't know if that makes sense. Michael Bunting, another Hurricanes move that I think is pretty good. Nick Bonino, that was the other player for the Rangers, really trying to get older. We have the player that no one really knows how to say his name, Vladislav Nemestikov, signed a deal with Winnipeg. I'm trying to figure out. Here's another one. Alex Killorn, 4 years, $25 million with Anaheim. It feels like an overpay, but I don't know what they think about it, honestly. The Penguins re-signed Jari by a little more than $5 million a year, and they signed Alex Nedeljkovic as a backup. I think that's pretty good for the value and what Nedeljkovic could possibly bring to you. I think that's pretty good from Pittsburgh. It's a pretty solid move. Ryan Graves signs with the Penguins as well, after playing for a big role for the Devils in the return to the playoffs in 2022-23. I think it's a pretty good deal. 6 years, $27 million. I don't know what to think about it money-wise. Miles Wood signs with the Avalanche. I don't know why the Avalanche would do that. The Islanders signed Pierre Engvall for $3 million a year for 7 years. They've signed Scott Mayfield on a long-term deal, and they've assigned a 4-year, $11 million deal with Varlamov and a giant overpay for Sorokin. If you're really banking on, be honest with me here. Are you really, if you are the Islanders, you're really believing that Sorokin is better than Shesterkin? I don't think he is. Because if Sorokin was at Shesterkin's levels, the Islanders would have gone farther in the playoffs than the Rangers did. I think they're currently around the same level. I would give it to Shesterkin still for what he did in the regular season. I think he's just a little bit better than Sorokin. But the question now arises, how much is Shesterkin going to get paid in his free agency year? That's just what I want to know. I have no idea. But with the Rangers not having much money this year, but with the raised salary cap, I think that could be the time where Shesterkin sign a long-term deal, probably within the next couple of years. Rangers adding more old depth. This is why, what I'm using is don't scroll through ESPN to search for free agency players. Jack Johnson, ex-Penguin, re-signed with the Avalanche. Kyler Yamamoto, we talked about. I believe I brought his name up in free agency from the last video. He signs with the Kraken. Here was the one I was talking about. Tyler Bertuzzi. Someone I mentioned the Maple Leafs with, but I don't know. He went to the Maple Leafs on a 1 year, $5.5 million deal. I think I like this move because if you're Bertuzzi, you're banking on yourself here because you're getting that 1 year and possibly getting more in your next year free agency. Max Domi also signed with Toronto, so I think that's a pretty good move to end July 2nd for the Maple Leafs. I think that's a pretty good deal. Pretty good 2 moves. So not much really else has happened. It's been a chaotic start to free agency, and I think there's going to be a lot more to come for sure. But unfortunately, that will end another episode of the Robbie Basel show. Sorry there wasn't much transfer talk today. Just to bring up a brief couple of transfers before I end the episode. I'm sorry I put the conclusion in there. We had Jurrien Timber likely signing his deal with Arsenal this week. Declan Rice is very close for Arsenal. We don't know where he's at with the medical and all that. We had Steven Gerrard become a manager in Saudi. That's all I'm saying on that matter. We had Mason Mount become an official Manchester United player, I believe, this week. We saw a couple other moves. Christian Pulisic is going to AC Milan after rejecting a move from Lyon. Chelsea are going to be wanting more money, especially the money that AC Milan's got from the Sandro Tonali deal, who he officially became a Newcastle United player. So he signs with the Magpies on a long-term deal. Not really much else to talk about for sure, but there's going to be a lot more transfers to talk about on Friday. So Friday's topics, we already know what some of them are going to be. We have the Gold Cup, brief update on NBA and NHL free agency, though I don't expect many more big names to be signing because I believe most of them have gone already. We had Gold Cup, Wimbledon, the free agencies, MLB season update briefly. We might talk about MLB. We might talk about MLB next week. Also coming up, we have more transfers and possibly some other topics if you really want to go into that for sure. But that's going to be the end of episode 16. Make sure to like and subscribe. For now, I'm Robbie Basel. I'll see you guys Friday.